Broken But Resonant podcast by Peter Morandi. This is Peter Morandi, and you're listening to Broken But Resonant, a podcast about the stories that form in the aftermath of breaking, about the sounds we make when we stop pretending we're fine. This isn't a podcast about overcoming. It's not about tying things up in a neat little bow. This is about being in it, whatever it is for you. Trauma, disability, burnout, or just the quiet ache of carrying something invisible for too long. It's about what we build when we finally stop hiding the damage, and how sometimes that's where the most honest sound gets through. When I was 16 years old, I suffered a traumatic brain injury. October 24th, 2007. That date is etched into me, though I didn't fully grasp the weight of it at the time. There was no roadmap, no follow-up, no counselor to sit me down and say, this is how life might change now. I was left to guess, and so I did what a lot of us do. I moved forward, quietly, confused, but always forward. I became a luthier. That's someone who builds and repairs guitars, ukuleles, and instruments with soul. I found meaning in restoration. But in 2020, another hit came. This time, a severe hand injury. I was 29. My work, my identity, my therapy, it all relied on those hands. And just like that, it was gone. Again, I adapted. But this year, something broke differently. On June 3rd, 2025, I had what I'll call my final straw moment. I was working in a role that initially felt promising, but over time, the cracks started showing. I disclosed my medical history. I asked for understanding. What I got instead was silence, judgment, and eventually a cold push toward the exit. Let me be clear. I didn't quit because I couldn't do the work. I resigned because the environment made it impossible to do the work safely. I resigned due to good cause. And that day, I hit my limit. It wasn't just about that job. It was the culmination of years of pretending, of coping alone. That resignation became a pivot point. In this podcast, it's part of what came next. Here's our first guest, Jordan, a disabled creative person who's gone through a difficult struggle and pivoted his execution of making, still letting his imagination and creative soul flourish.
I lost most of the use of my right hand in a car accident 5 years ago. At first, I thought I'd never draw again. I was devastated. But then I started experimenting. Voice controls, adaptive styluses, left-handed sketching. Now, I'm a visual designer. I've had to rebuild how I work, how I create, but in some weird way, it made me more intentional. Everything I do now is deliberate. It carries more weight, more meaning. It's not that I overcame anything. I redefined what I needed to thrive.
Our second guest, Lena. A musician who's got a family history of musicians and an instrument passed down through generations.
My grandfather's guitar had been in our family for generations. It was cracked when I brought it to Peter, and honestly, I thought it might be done for. When I picked it up, I saw the repair line. Not hidden, just part of it now. And when I strummed that first chord, I actually teared up. It sounded warmer, deeper. There's something sacred about giving something broken a second life. That guitar tells a story now, one that includes the damage, not in spite of it.
Something I want to bring up that I think a lot of us feel, but rarely say out loud, the pressure to just bounce back. After my injuries, people around me kept asking when I'd get back to work or why I hadn't already, as if healing, especially from something invisible, has a schedule. Did either of you deal with that?
Absolutely. My friends meant well, but after a few months, it turned into, you're still not drawing? Or just push through it. What they didn't get is that I wasn't physically or emotionally in the same place anymore. The old me couldn't come to the phone.
Yeah, for me, it was family. Music was what I'd always done, so when I paused, they panicked. My mom would send me articles about singers performing through vocal issues or say, just sing through the pain. But it wasn't just my voice. It was the fear, the grief. And there's no bandage for that.
It's that invisible weight, the stuff nobody sees, but it pulls at you constantly. People think if you're not in a hospital bed, you must be fine.
Exactly. It's not dramatic enough to be taken seriously, but it's heavy enough to shape your entire day.
And when we do push through just to satisfy others, we often end up worse off. I've learned that real strength is setting boundaries, not proving resilience to people who don't see the full picture.
That right there. Boundaries over bravado. I think a lot of us are finally learning that healing isn't passive, and it's definitely not linear.
Healing is creative. You have to redesign your life.
And forgive yourself for not running at full speed in a world that only celebrates acceleration.
Thank you both for opening up like that. These are the truths that deserve volume. Before we wrap up, I want to share something personal that's been unfolding even as I record this. Earlier this morning, I had an MRI on my right hand. It's the same hand I injured back in October 2020, and that injury never fully healed. Then in February of this year, I re-aggravated it. It's been constant since. Luckily, this is covered under a workers' comp claim. The doctors are trying to figure out what's going on. A large mass between my thumb and pointer finger, possible nerve damage. And they're talking about surgery once we get the results from today's scan. It's a lot to carry, especially with my migraine flare-up and work issues. I have a new migraine medicine waiting for me at the pharmacy, but cannot afford it until next month when my insurance coverage kicks in. For context, the meds cost right around $2,000 without insurance. That's why I started a GoFundMe. It's not to fund this podcast, it's to help with medical co-pays, travel costs, and other appointment-related expenses. It's also to support some basic stability during this recovery period and my current unemployment period, juggling everything I'm dealing with. That includes being able to manage my health, continue my college coursework without interruption, and have time to find a job that works with the limitations I now face. I'm currently working with the Hireability Vermont, an employment service helping me explore viable and sustainable employment options that allow flexibility and understanding. Jordan, Lena, have you ever felt like you were stuck between trying to heal and trying to survive?
Definitely. There was a point when I couldn't draw, couldn't freelance, and still had bills piling up. I felt like I had to choose between therapy and groceries. People say rest is healing, but healing without support is a full-time job.
Same here. I remember selling my favorite guitar pedal just to afford a copay. I hated asking for help. But eventually, I realized I wasn't asking for luxury. I was asking for breathing room.
And asking is still one of the hardest parts. But I'm learning that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's honesty. And sometimes it's the only way forward. If anyone listening feels moved to contribute or to further share to help spread more awareness during this difficult time, the GoFundMe link is in the episode description. Even a share makes a difference. Thank you for letting me include this here. Stories like Jordan's and Lena's remind me why I'm doing this, why I've chosen to stop editing myself down to fit in places I no longer belong. I'm studying design and media now, using the tools I never had growing up to finally say what I've needed to say. I've taken up 3D printing, digital storytelling, audio production, that builds towards something I didn't think I was allowed to have. Freedom. Not the fantasy of freedom. The kind where you make peace with the wreckage and keep building anyway. Thank you for listening to Broken But Resonant. If this story landed with you, I hope you'll stick around for the next one. I'll be sharing more voices, more repairs, and more of the music that lives in the aftermath. Until then, stay kind, stay honest, and remember, sometimes the most beautiful sound comes after the break.